Sheila here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and I was going to talk about the Esther Perel's chart because it's a name I mention a lot, and I haven't even talked about the chart. I do believe I have karmic rope with the moon. So it's going to be an episode about orgasm, wealth, ritual abuse, and I'm going to open with a tiny little bit about um, what I remember from Esther Perel's chart, and that is the strong Venus Procyon not too far from the moon. And whether the moon is in Leo or in Cancer, Venus, Procyon, Venus's relationships, Procyon is looking into oneself to see what is coming from the outside. And this is such a relevant thing. In fact, I'm really, really honoring of Esther Perel because when I was going to a psychodynamic psychotherapy and there was an astral experience that was erotic with the therapist that actually did not begin as something non-consensual. It was kind of like it just happened and that was okay, but I did not know that the therapist was very likely ritually abused and very likely MK Ultra and very likely had to perpetuate abuse, and that was even the point of me going there to therapy, which I didn't know. Um, when it came to relational issues, I addressed things the Esther Perel way. It's like there's probably a reason that you've been drawn here, and when it comes to non-monogamy community, we look at it more the Esther Perel way. What is consisting of that thing? As an astrologer, we look at Uranus, and that person was mind controlled to traffic me, trying to use trying to get me into situations that I would be considered as a woman that doesn't respect herself, while I was curating from sexual boundary violation and the entire society being violating on a sexual, psychosexual, erotic level, which I ran into in academia. Um, and in that regard, a lot of my healing came supposedly in spite of what was supposed to be the outcome of that so-called therapy. Again, I looked into the body-mind question in the philosophy of medicine prior to COVID, and did astrology on the side. And later, I would learn aromatherapy to give an applied science experience of the body of a holistic type of medicine. So there was a lot, and I was to be considered. I didn't see myself as a great peace activist, um, but I was going to One Voice, and I was participating in Mother Luan. So and I made a satire that was basically on the cult that everybody is dealing with right now. So when I was going through what would from the outside look as sexual boundary violation or harassment in academia, I did not litigate because I wanted to see authentically what is going on with me. Why do I see men and women have conversation that my sexual energy is downright drained by, to the point that I cannot work, um, and understanding that our best jurisdiction people are trained in academia, and understanding that the role of jurisdiction is not punitive but preventative um, and corrective. Okay, just to make sure that we set the boundary to the action. And when we talk about the astral field, again, fractions before people go into lockdowns and COVID, um, a jail is not going to be suffice, and that requires a great sense of embodiment from our own self. So that trajectory, so knowing the money that I had put into learning the relational skills from relational coaches and listening to people like Esther Perel and erotic intelligence and challenging the preconceived notions of intimacy came in really useful, because when there was an attempt to make me ashamed for being sensual or being or trying to um, make it look like I don't respect myself, all those things that I was not even on the path and on the line to, um, and my acquaintance with the topic of non-monogamy basically nullified a major portion of the erotic shaming that participates in trafficking an adult person. And unlike people that are talking about, oh, sex work is work, I did go to sell courses that had to do with self pleasure, and talking about particularly the sexual traumas of the body mind that are absolutely not necessarily like rape or people that were trafficked. Um, and when I look deeper into the testimonies, again, when we talk about the body, when we talk about body being yeasty, we talk about all those things that people are ashamed to talk about regarding their orgasms, it usually comes down to people that were tortured and programmed, whether they remember this or not. Um, and this is one my next topic. So I was sleeping. This happens sometimes. Takes a lot. And I talk a lot about sushi, and I saw there was a certain energy that were coming to the forefront, and it kind of showed me a girl in Japan um, trying to get a sushi, and she had to do sex work, and what it showed me was that she had to go through the worst pain humanly possible to be basically trafficked by a man to get something like, I don't know, 1,000 yuan or something like that to buy herself sushi. And whatever that energy was coming from, it was not an energy that knows, it's not an energy that accurately knows me and my values, but it seemed like that energy was trying to give me a reality check on sex work. And and I'm like, well, I'm actually not into doing sex work myself, um, but that was still useful information. And this coming from the type of people that, or the type of sexual needs, or what would it get to orgasm to the people that have the money, and to that pertains basically to satanic ritual abuse. There were people that were programmed in all kinds of, when I say programmed, it means that they were raped and tortured, and there was a work on their nervous system. I don't know what from by far or by proxy was done on me as a child, 41, and still struggling. At first it was around internal things, and then it's kind of like, hey, about being in the body and not being attacked when I'm trying to be sensual with me, and or even find me and my own sensuality. Fortunately, I have a Venus in Taurus that is very embodied and very connected to sensuality. It is next to Sedna and fair banking, so um, very likely the financiers or the banking um, had other ideas of wealth consolidation in mind, and this is where Sedna brings an erotic intelligence never before seen into the orgasmic realm. So, relating to that snapshot of that dream, Basically, the people that also are the business people, are the people that run companies, are the people that go into these different echelons. Some of them called elites, some whatever. They were trafficked as children. A lot of them, they had to go through ritual satanic abuse. And that was part of a banking system and a wealth consolidation system. And which is what I addressed in my previous video, Tree, as I talk about that. I don't know what it means. Um, but is what I addressed in my previous video when I talked about the fact that some of these people that their faces might be in an extortion code, whether they remember this or not, also they were the child that had to make it look comfortable for an adult person to cross through inhuman pain to get an orgasm. To supposedly an orgasm, people rely on orgasm to calm the nervous system down. And I want to talk about my academic work. So when I was looking into the body-mind question, we talk about neural plasticity and brain plasticity. From the perspective of aromatherapy, we use geranium essential oil for people that had um, basically nervous system alternation, whether it's people that can't move a limb or people that had a threshold crossed in the nervous system. But before I even talk about the geranium oil, the idea behind those things, behind the nervous system, behind the orgasmic threshold was to gatekeep orgasm and to gatekeep wealth. And I want to talk, one thing that really inspired, it was a Steltwell talisman, a mermaid Steltwell talisman that a Renaissance astrologer, an astrological magician and attorney, Christopher Warnock, did. And it was, and one thing that he said was kind of a gnosis from working on this talisman was the best place to hide a leaf is in the forest. And that meaning that the best way to hide our wealth is within gigantic wealth. And as a person who's digging Half Moon to build forests and remineralize areas, and basically build in the resources that when I mineralize my teeth or when I use essential oils to take a lot of herbs to condense into the essence of the potency of the medicine. Basically, I have easier access than those billionaires to the wealth because the nervous system was gatekeep the gate of the threshold of an orgasm, at least in some of the personalities, because they have they have to be who they need to be in a certain situation, and it can go full way did, okay? So it doesn't show up as it's more malleable, um, but some of the personalities have these, or some of the people that they need to be more accurate to the context in which they were programmed, have this threshold of orgasm, and the threshold of orgasm is gatekeeping the abundance of relaxation, peace, manifestation, and their initiation process, conjoining this almost dissociative threshold, creates um, those things that I want us to at least consciously understand. Whether you're a satanic ritual abuse survivor, just a person who finds it difficult to have an orgasm. And again, difficult to have an orgasm doesn't mean you find it difficult. Sometimes it means tantric embodiment, or that you're naturally inclined to have tantric embodiment, and you need to give yourself time. Okay, I have Saturn in Scorpio, which necessitates time and duration for sensuality. And, and in the ninth house, which necessitates that to be a positive spiritual experience for me. which is basically what kept me from a lot of those trafficking scams, even though it was complete programming done on me, probably as an infant, that I don't quite know about. Those that read energy can look at my picture that I post often, and I don't know what other energy is in that picture, but I know for sure that it's not just the energy of a young girl. And so, um, when we talk about that type of programming, first of all, what we need to understand consciously is that that was the design of the programming, or at least that was the outcome. And a person then has a pain threshold that they need to cross to have an orgasm. And that pain threshold can be internal, or what people call masochistic, or an external, what people call sadistic, um, or both. And that is basically the outcome is gatekeeping wealth, is gatekeeping a threshold of balancing the nervous system that they are dependent on, so that they will participate in things that would be of use to extortion cult. And I remember that this was in the vicinity of certain programming that they were trying to have on me as a child. And that particularly came across when I ran into people that had affiliation with intelligence. Okay, so growing up in Israel, almost every other guy I would set my eyes on would be intelligence, whether I knew it or not. Um, and there were a lot of rituals that were done on their eroticism and sexuality, including mine. So, and that was so the programming was indeed regarding that. And as a very, very young person, um, I experienced the embodiment and in my own sensuality only through pleasure. And this is the gift that I have, which is Venus in Taurus. So for those that have it available, night chart working with a Venus Taurus can be of great use for a lot of you. Um, and again, if you have a Mars in Scorpio, then you might want to go about that in a different way, or conjoin a Venus and kind of like you have to see where the Mars is, even Jupiter Procyon or a Procyon and Venus, um, then and try to contact the sensual energy and understand that on a conscious level at least have that understanding that you actually don't need to gatekeep the inner wealth. And a lot of you consciously understand that. If I spoke with an economist that told me the numbers, the resources, we have more than enough for every single human being on planet Earth to be thriving, and they were working in the Israeli Palestinian Chamber of Commerce. We had some of the best minds in the economy for the Middle East, because they were trying to achieve peace for the sake of the economy. Okay, so these guys knew what they knew their field, they knew their math, and they knew the resources behind the math. And hearing that from an economist, perhaps, um, and perhaps it's maybe about, hey, take a look at the numbers, take a look. But the thing is, when people have addiction, they they don't have the access because their orgasmic threshold is gatekeeping them from peace. So they would need drugs. They would need to dissociate to have an orgasm. They would need to dissociate to have an orgasm because they have a sadistic threshold. They will need uh, um, they would need to pay a lot of people a lot of money to keep that silent. And indeed, healing is speaking, and that would be um, we even had we had politicians in Israel that took us out of Lebanon, and a lot of people have complaints about that. but Lebanon ones are nam, and then they were also is considered sex offenders against children, um, and it didn't see it as anything wrong, whether it's the Epstein or whatnot. Um, and this was, first of all, impairing their speech because it comes on something that has to do with them being ritually abused. And so once we get that, first of all, in a very real way, then tending to those thresholds. And no, it's not more drugs, more antipsychotics. And I really appreciate Melanie um, for suggesting, okay, those things. But it's not about more of the numbing drugs that are creating health problems. It's about, first of all, consciously understanding, hey, that threshold is manufactured artificially. It's not something that's actually true to wealth, and that doesn't yield on an economic investment, erotic, life fulfillment level. Now that we get to the what does, so a lot of you are going to need a shit ton of essential oil. Rose essential oil, angelica essential oil. Angelica, you want the non-phototoxic. I think that is not the root. Wait a second. And geranium. Geranium is very important because geranium, and you want to work on your vagus nerve. So whether you are a survivor of ritual abuse, and it doesn't matter because you were set to both perpetuate abuse and go through abuse. Um, and this was also a gnosis about myself. I had the privilege to be, as Abraham Hicks says, far enough from the problem, near enough to the problem so that I can see the problem, far enough from the problem so that I can manifest the solution. And I put a shit ton into my studies. And let me take a look at the Angelica oil. So, yeah, for the Angelica, yeah. So for the Angelica, we want the seeds, not the roots, because the roots are phototoxic. Now, what is the combination of these three oils? Um, First of all, geranium oil. And if you just have a spoonful of any organic oil and 1 drop, 2 drops of geranium oil, each time, as many times as you need, it's both healing nerve pain, and a lot of you may suffer from nerve pain because of those things, particularly when you're trying to heal. And the vagus nerve is just behind the ears, behind the neck, humming, expressing yourself and the voice. Even if people connect to themselves erotically at the voice expression, and immediately it's going to bring up the question of architecture. Fine, a lot of you folks have the resources. That's good to run into before the 15-minute city. Um, and so, because the voice is a part of the healing of the vagus nerve, and it takes around 6 months of uh, um, exposure to different type of nervous system activity, and the geranium oil facilitates in that nourishment to begin to move things around. Now, for those of you that will have more access to oxytocin, this is the hormone of unlearning. Whatever practices that you do for psychic protection, first of all, just listening to this video is psychic protection because it's the conscious mind, it's tending into the root cause of a lot of the dumb fuckery that keep people in extortion cults where if you were the adult person and there's your picture, very likely we're also the child, and whoever trained you, there's their picture. You only have to look a couple of decades upward and see that the Centaurians very likely were the people in the picture. and we have satanic ritual abuse survivors, which are entitled to a legal defense. Once you cross the threshold to become survivor, you're entitled to the same legal defense. You basically are satanic ritual abuse survivor. And we have people like Alandra that were groomed to be Epstein. They were breeders. They were raped. They were rapists. They participated in harming children. They were the children being harmed. So we have a preliminaries jurisdiction-wise to completely nullify the extortion cults, but more so to retrieve the access to wealth independently of those archaic notion that tell you that you need to curse yourself medically, that tell you that you need to get into some sort of a lack or a price or a sacrifice to gain wealth, where in fact foresting the Sahara would be way more useful. And it would get you within the Jupiterian trajectory of wealth, and a lot of you are not night charts. So Jupiter is the greater benefit, is not working uh, um, necessarily immediately in your favor, because to access choice you need to understand that you are also deserving of, and what you're deserving of is not to cross the threshold of the sadistic, masochistic gatekeeping to your own manifestation of wealth, but to embodily relax into. And some people use MDMA. Again, you want to make sure that you're not in the vicinity of people that could put you on camera again with a child when you're consuming that. And it can look the most innocent therapist room if you're doing psychedelics, because those things are also happening in the astral. Again, I can refer not from experience to Dr. Miller or to people like Annika Lucas, um, that have crossed those thresholds and began to heal the personality related issues. Floaters, which is actually, I was shown when I was channeling to follow the trajectory within. When you close your eyes, it looks like there are things that are running there, and to follow their trajectory and connect with that. So I was guided to do that. Um, I remember I was in Haifa, and I was in between homes, and I was guided to do that. Um, and so it's very likely that there were forces that were trying to help me get out of ritual satanic abuse, while there were attempts to traffic me at the same time, which made it very challenging to discern and to trust. So I can relate to that challenge. Um, um, and then when we go about those thresholds, anything like giving and receiving a hug. Now, a lot of you will not have that much access to receiving a hug, um, but hugging is something that gets your oxytocin. In fact, for the majority of my life, I was not able to hug. So naturally, and I was trying to look at my psychosexual issues as looking for the perfect orgasm that is enjoyable before, during, and after, while I did not have the things that sparked the oxytocin, because I wasn't even thinking about it. And not only that, to make it even more satirical, I spent at least a decade of my life uh, um, logging on to programs like Omegle, typing suicide and helping people. There were a lot of people that were doing that, and sometimes we needed help, and sometimes we helped people. And through that, it would take, I think, maybe even a couple of years when I would run into a story of somebody else that helped someone, and that young girl was on the roof about to jump, and he told her that she's loved and he cared about her, and that she didn't jump, and I was like, that's so weird. So depending on what training you received and what training did you not receive, um, and the more I'm sorry, but the more painful training that the people received, it means that they were meant to be programmers. to get people to the threshold of dissociation, and what people call the rainbow, and the rain. And, okay, so um, yeah, particularly the Paris folks, the um, Heidelberg, okay, Heidelberg, and Brussels. If you have memories from either of those, then you may have been at least psychically exposed. And to be psychically exposed, there would be some sort of a ritual taking place from afar that you would be affected by. Um, there was one in 2007, there was one in 2019. Spiritual warfare is another signification of those. So, working with the vagus nerve, um, hugging, creating sensation that is pleasant, because a lot of you are neurodivergent as fuck. Okay? And not only that, unlike Gen Zers that need to have a safety room and sensory safety room and so on, a lot of you can't express that as freely because it was used against you. Um, and um, and knowing that you're entitled to lifelong compensation from MK Ultra, and knowing that there's a civil war in the CIA. Okay, so the programs that were used to um, to horrify your senses are going through civil war clock, which means that there is a sensory war where the ones that are most benefic to the nervous system win over the resources. This is why the threshold has been opened um, to begin to tend to one's own nervous system and understand that all of your fears, jurisdiction, extortion cults, people that have erotic attraction to children, people that go into trauma around things being exposed, um, all of those. When if there is a picture of you with the child, there is a picture of somebody raping you when you were the child, um, and that is completely nullifying. And if we have satanic ritual abuse survivors that were groomed to be the Epsteins and Detschws and Dietlers, then the people that cross the threshold, and not only that, if you're worried about wealth and not having any money, it's this work on your vagus nerve that removes the nervous system programming, and all the curses had to be embedded into the nervous system programming. And this removes that programming and removes the gatekeeping of wealth on a psychosexual erotic level. Okay? Bilderberg and Belsen was based on Bilderberg, okay? Was based on the creation, it was side by side with MK Ultra, the creation of those nervous system gatekeeping to orgasm. I just gave you the undoing of the Bilderberg and Belsen. Okay, so they have sold to my Rahu. This the first conference as Sun conjoining my Rahu, and conjoining the asteroid grooming. So I was basically supposed to be groomed to be trafficked to that milieu. I don't know my blood type, but astrologically, as an astrologer, I just take a look at the chart and I'm like, okay, Sun conjoining Rahu, and Rahu in my fourth house. It means started something in childhood. Chiron in my fourth house, the asteroid Groom, which is to do with those things, and the sun of the first conference of the Bilderberg and Belsen. And so, an astrologer is very evident. And the first thing I noticed about this chart was the Chiron in around my lot of fortune, um, it's basically a part of my lot of fortune to curate, because my lot of fortune trines my lot of spirit, and it's a part of my, what I can do about it is curate the Chiron wound of the Bilderberg and Belsen, because they were supposed to go through this and perpetuate that. And their Saturn is to my Pluto. Their Saturn is going through the major transits of this eclipse. This is why it's arriving right now. And so the worry, the regaining access to choice, or regaining access to value oneself and understand that you are deserving of life. Because what would happen is when, let's say, in a spiritual warfare, um, the opponent, or the person that doesn't want to be raped or doesn't want to be trafficked, they would have only their power of speech sometimes. And that is perpetuating trauma. And so the curation is understanding that you're of course you're deserving of life, of course you're deserving of having a good orgasm and good sex and wealth, and you don't need to depend on this MK Ultra wealth consolidation programming. I'll let you in even more about that. Okay? Illuminati was not in a DM of the content creators for no reason. The ones that fund for Illuminati is the Rothschild and Rockefellers. And these folks are wealth families that look at a trajectory. They remember what happened in these times to their families, okay? So they understand that there needs to be a change in the wealth consolidation. And so when I speak about these things, you better rest assured that you can't, probably if I watched Annika Lucas and she was in the wealth consolidation by the Rothschild and Rockefellers, they weren't sleeping with the children as far as she saw, but they were using that for wealth consolidation. Um, and we have people that politicians that were working with Rothschild, and later pivoted a little bit away. Um, then we have the Rothschild and Rockefellers pragmatically assessing the fact that, hey, the structures of wealth consolidations are changing, and we better keep up to speed with those changes. Here, there are a lot of people that either were survivors of these rituals or perpetuated, and they're going about wealth in a different way. We better keep up to speed with them to maintain our power in a very pragmatic sense. And just as they were doing, if they were doing, Baphomet rituals or Mammon rituals, and there are other rituals that gain wealth and that stands the test of time, why the fuck not? I mean, they wouldn't gatekeep themselves from wealth, particularly when they were doing the things underneath gloved hands, and they're getting caught red-handed, and they might not have gone through the full-blown orgasmic gatekeeping themselves, so they might even have access to that in a way that's even easier. So those practices are absolutely relevant to those, and the fact that um, people are opting out of any type of slave in the coming 7 years, which are going to be pivotal to the out of bounds. It's 7 years out of 10 years that Pluto is out of bounds. That's pretty fucking significant. And the rest of the year is correlated with the French Revolution and the guillotine, where people would hate the billionaires, hate the monarchy, and chase everybody to extinction. And we are in the age of air, so people have, and what happens when people are going through these tortures? It's a couple of entities that hack nervous systems, and they can hack it, And so the good thing about that is that the threshold to curate things that were thought never before possible. Oh, pedophilia, people are born with that. No, they're not. Oh, those mass ritual. I look at Bella Sloan channeling of the Tate Sharon Tate. Okay, and some of you have psychic abilities, so be very tender with yourself, because you're going to see what happened to her, and please be tender with yourself. Okay, so don't force yourself to watch this content, um, because I know a lot of programming was forcing people to watch content, um, but she was channeling, basically showing that Manson was mind controlled, and they used the tree of life, tree of death, okay, all those things, um, which is antithetical to wealth. As a young child, I had the gnosis, the immediate gnosis, that no, we don't need the evil to see the good. I had this gnosis, and this is a wealth gnosis that is a trajectory. When I talk about the timelines of the golden ages, and a lot of people get so triggered. No, I don't mean it. Like, hey, you know, how should I say that? It's kind of like there are the dark ages practices of wealth, and there are the future practices of wealth. The world families know that, and so people don't want to go with those that were trafficked to in this time be a part of the world consolidation and be exposed and rejuvenated and be expandable as billionaires. While and there are people that want to gatekeep people, and the very desire to gatekeep people is coming from this um, programming that they have to cross a certain threshold of the nervous system, a pain threshold, to have an orgasm, and then they think they need to gatekeep wealth, where in fact they are, as Annika Lucas said, they are perpetuating trauma that gatekeeps the wealth from them. Again, I look around the tube. I look around the discourse. The ones that, why did they hate the Jews bankers? Because they were financing all sides of the scope. The the same people that fund for the billionaires that meet to consolidate the European line of thought and the American line of thought in Arnhem, okay, um, those very same people fund the Union of Labor Organizations that is supposed to hate the billionaires and execute them. Either people are going to go into this masters and slaves, bloodline segregation. Bankers don't mind. They fund for that. Go fight each other. Money runs here, money runs there. At least the money preserves its value, because they all need the currency, and even if they work under other currencies that people don't even know if they need to money launder that to use that every once in a while, even for tax evasion, because the tax collectors of those other currencies, they're astral. Fairbank, okay? The people that are in charge of creating false flags are financed by the same people that are in charge of bringing them to litigation and execute them. And when I talk about sexual sovereignty, I don't just spit nice words in there. I'm 41 years old. I'm going through this journey since I was in the womb. And probably not going through this journey alone because of those weird rituals. So, And I don't just spit words in the air, I also give actual viable practices. Nobody's going to hunt you if you buy essential oil. Nobody's going to hunt you if geranium goes out of stock tomorrow, then people will have to plant geranium. But if you are if your life depends on polluting the air, it is getting that access to your nervous system, your vagus nerves, even by rubbing your vagus nerve, even by humming, you already begin to tap into the threshold, to the nervous system threshold that was gatekeeping you from wealth and making you believe that your life depends on gatekeeping others from wealth. They're not. All the courses and rituals done on you are going into the nervous system. And they have a trajectory. Pluto is now in the sign in Aquarius. Everybody is scheduled to tap into the power of their nervous system. Everybody. For some, it's going to be the mental health. For some, it's going to be the connection with their inner child, Israel. And I have literally been receiving energy of people that partook in pedophilia in Israel. Fifth house of Israel. And that pertains to the nervous system. And you know, people are gatekeeping the curation from those things. Mind you, when a person is going through molestation, going through satanic abuse, even if they didn't have to perpetuate, then the point is that they will be at the threshold of perpetrator victim for all their life whenever they want to have an orgasm and sleep well and so on and so forth. So one way is, you know, to tend to any fungal structures. For example, yeast structures. There's the good yeast, and I'm going to take my vitamins. I want to recommend something because it seems to be quite nice. It's EcoSub Zen. I do not get dividends for that. Probiotics with prebiotics, and you put it in a cup. So you put it in a cup, and this is very good for a lot of people that grew candida. A lot of you will have excess growth of yeast because the candida is so associated with sexual boundary violation. So this is key also to curate teeth. And the special thing about it is that you wait a minute and then you just drink it with half a glass of water. Of course, stir it up. I'm going to do that with you actually. So so all the things that scare you have a solution. In fact, a lot of you were trained to understand that, but on a psychosexual erotic level, trained to forget that gnosis. At least one personality, because some of you have personalities that are supposed to be lover boys or lover girls, and there would be some personalities that have access to all the orgasmic lovey-dovey things, but the other ones seem to don't. And this is the beginning of addressing that which seems to doesn't. I had a lot of success with people that were defining themselves as fully kinky. And again, I'm absolutely not against kink, safe and consensual. But as they were beginning to practice their vanilla, then a lot of things came up and they began to find themselves the alchemy. Some of them were not even able to do the very daily activities that were life risking, and they were molested by their psychologists and molested by their psychiatrists. Um, so this is where I want you to understand that all the things that were meant to scare you from exiting those societies, first of all, know that the wealth families understand that wealth consolidation would need to be done differently because they don't want to get caught red-handed, and they already did. It's the time of the season when everybody talks about the Brazilians. And at the same time, everybody that was going on the Rockefeller strategy of wealth creation is getting caught red-handed. And again, it's not against Rockefeller. That was good for those times. But now, you know, the letting go of the grip is actually opening our nervous system to receive and transform in a way that has natural access to wealth. And like, you know, a teacher, an attorney, not my attorney, but attorney Christopher Warnock very wisely says, the best way to hide a leaf is in the forest. Before Pluto was entering Aquarius, and I have family in the lodges, I know that for certain. People don't name their dog Lucifer for no reason, okay? And so I said to my uncle, get out of the lodges. And then, of course, people say, well, it's not that simple, but he can't say it. So this is a key to the threshold where you can begin to get out of the lodges. And when you have a balanced nervous system, there's a certain trajectory where the nervous system around you has to adjust. Okay? I dare say, of course, when you deal with those things as I deal, sometimes the people that were you know, in those Peter rings. I had a case where some energy try to contact me, and I'm like, don't talk fear to me. I'm listening to what you're saying. Don't talk fear to me. And one of the things that they were showing me was first about the father, so having access to a healthy father, about the mothers that were sometimes violated during pregnancy, and the nervous system, and how being in the nervous system connection or thinking the thoughts that are not along the side of predatory are actually the way out. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was unexpected. And yes, I will not disclose what was this energy associated with, but this is definitely okay. At first came at me to try to scare me and so on, and then I was like, no, I'm listening to you. Because I saw that, hey, there are satanic ritual abuse survivors that were supposed to be groomed to be the worst of the worst. And then there are people within those societies that are, okay, by the way, oats, the food oats, is inflammatory. And those that work along the line of alchemy know what I'm talking about. Okay, that was more than a minute. Okay, it kind of has a weird taste, but I find it not that terrible. And another probiotic that I'm trying is, let me see if I have, yeah. Okay, so these are very tasty gummies. Actually, don't chew on them. I just let them dissolve. And this is BioMind gummies. Now, this is me doing human experiments on myself. And it's the first time I tried it, and it's a relatively new product. It's made of chicory in Thibus. So it's the roots of chicory, the fiber in the roots of chicory, FOS probiotic, fibers, Bacillus coagulans, tapioca, and strawberry mango, which is very tasty. Caranova wax. And again, I'm trying that. This one is supposed to be good for the particular yeast that people are worried about, and this is the yeast that's associated with trafficking rings. Now, of course, those things like, oh my God, that's evidence. Worry not. We just address that. If a person begins to treat their own nervous system and in a way that would stop gatekeeping wealth from themselves, first of all, it facilitates even the wealth family to change the way they do wealth consolidation, because they are learning from us. They are learning that, hey, people have access to wealth and they don't need to sacrifice their soul to mammon. Okay? But it's like, oh, but all of that costs money. Yeah, I'm also digging up half moons, which remineralizes, and I would invest in like the best. If you don't know what to invest in, go to a barren land and dig yourself a half moon. If you live in anywhere where there's a desert, find yourself an open field, dig yourself a half moon. I would put, you would get better heart rate. Okay, you would get a lot of satisfaction. You would sleep better because you're connected with the soil. Don't be scared about the stuff that they put into the air, because all you really need to do is dig another half moon and then you turn the soil over. Now, when you turn the soil over, for example, somebody put in, yesterday I recorded a big video about the archaic wealth practices of sacrifice that are actually, the trafficking is actually a wealth block. And that happened after I wake up in the morning. Somebody put an empty wallet, an old empty wallet, in the garden. And at night I felt this, it's terrible when they try to curse the inner child, which is, they always try to access the inner child because they try to program the mind. And for me, it was like, it was a no-brainer. I just took one of the stones and then turned it over, turned some soil over it, and I blessed whoever put that they will only be able to make money in a way that benefits myself and humanity. And then I go about my day and I record a video that I recorded yesterday. So when people spray your lawn or spray your yard, yeah, grow the things in the inside or indoors. It's also good for growing things on space. But also dig up the soil, transmute the energy, and you will get the answer to the dumb fuckery. And as always, the reason I put it out there, if you deal with something and you have an answer, you don't need to gatekeep. Make a content, and you can even do an AI content. Okay, a lot of people want a human voice, but you can even do an AI content on the topic, get yourself monetized, and you don't even have to expose yourself, okay, in the open, because this is how we alchemize and transmute energy. And also, this is how when you put it out in the open, maybe you had, I don't know, a problem with your neighbor, okay? Then you go to the core issue of that problem with the neighbor, then you put the solution out there without mentioning who that neighbor was. Now there are a lot of people that have problems with their neighbors, okay? And those people are behind, even when I was posting a video, it seems like, oh, there's nobody is connecting to your content. Da, 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 da. Come on. The Illuminati is not just in the DM, but those wealth families, okay, are absolutely watching. And if I would want to contact so and so and so and so in the Rothschild and Rockefeller, I would have to go through this and that secretary and this secretary and later and this and that. All I really have to do is speak in my room. And they understand. They understand that there's a wealth consolidation, and they understand that I'm a person they can, like, I'm a person